Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. This is our latest webinar. We're going to look at the justification for specialist seating. My name is Les Jones and I'm accompanied by my colleague, Rebecca Dunstall, our clinical lead.
Hiya.
Just before we start, I'll hand you over to Rebecca. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording today's presentation, so please make sure your mics and your cameras are switched off. Our colleague Kim is monitoring the chat feature of Teams, so if you have any questions relating to the presentation that you'd like us to answer at the end, please feel free to post your question there. We'll catch up with you a little bit later. Anything we do miss, we will come back to you personally after the event. If you've got any technical issues, again, Kim can help out with that. What we finds to work best, though, is to leave and rejoin the meeting. Following the event, you'll receive a copy of the presentation and a link to the presentation as well. So I'm just going to hand you over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Les.
Rebecca's going to load her presentation and I shall see you in about half an hour, 40 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, we're going to do a bit of a theory with myself, and then at the end we're going to apply that to a bit of a practical session and consolidate that. So hopefully you can all see the presentation now. We'll run through the presentation together, titled Supporting You with Your Clinical Justification. And we're going to start off by firstly just reviewing, as we always do, recapping the importance of specialist seating. Those of you who might be new to postural care or to specialist seating, just to make sure that everyone fully understands where we're coming from when we talk about specialist seating and how it fits into 24-hour postural care. We'll then discuss the key clinical justifications and highlight the evidence for cost effectiveness. Okay, so postural development then, as we grow, we learn from and respond to information that is sent from various sources, such as the visual system, vestibular, and even proprioceptive feedback. Now, if we think about the individuals that we work with who may have damage to any of their body systems, what that does, it affects their ability to interact with information, and then individuals will find it increasingly difficult to achieve protective postures. So that's it in the most basic of terms. Postural challenges happen due to body distortion, and of course we have the individual's inability to change position independently. This then tends to result in asymmetrical positioning. You then got the added influence of gravitational forces. Now, gravity is unrelenting and it's very difficult. I mean, even if I asked you to sit there in one position for the next 10 hours on a bar stool, you'd soon feel the effects of gravity. It's unrelenting, it's really hard, especially for the individual we work with who might have damage to their body systems, such as weakness and abnormal muscle tone, to really hold themselves erect against those forces. Now, the problem with gravity is it tends to further exaggerate those asymmetries. So we have this vicious cycle then of body distortion. Postural care is simply the holistic use of any technique that we utilise as therapists to minimise postural abnormality, whilst also enhancing functional movement. And it's an approach that aims to preserve and hopefully even in some cases restore body shape. Now, the good news is, despite popular beliefs, body distortion is not inevitable. So if we have a proactive approach with the right equipment at the right time, in line with solid positioning techniques, we can help to protect body shape. I think it's always helpful here to really ask ourselves the question, well, why is postural care important? And think about the individuals that we might work with. So there's Callum here, and visually trying to understand, why is postural care important to Callum? This is why. When we think about quality of life improvements and our clinical objectives and the support network objectives are all there to enhance quality of life for individuals like Callum. So I think this is always a helpful reminder of why we do what we do. Now, the challenge is that autonomy and self-determination can be challenging skills to master, especially in current situations with professional restraints and budget issues. How often are you as a health and social care professional queried on your recommendations? And how many of you are actually confident and trust in your own clinical justifications? So hopefully that's what we're going to get out today, empower you to understand and be able to put across the message about why specialist seating within postural care is important, how it can help individuals, but also how can it help service provision. Clinical justification is the evidenced information that links our recommended prescription to the intended objectives that follow that comprehensive assessment. It's an opportunity for us to advocate for best client outcomes and ultimately aids in decision making, prioritising, and obviously then securing funding. In terms of clinical justification in practice, this of course usually presents itself as a report, a funding request, a panel meeting. That report needs to be all encompassing, and this is a really handy checklist that hopefully you can make sure that you cover all areas of that report. Where possible, if you can have a multidisciplinary approach, if you work with other professions and having joint signatures on that report would be really beneficial, because it shows that true holistic personalised care approach. But essentially we need to identify the needs, considering the aims and objectives of the client, the support network, and even the environment as well. We need to present those clinical findings as a problem list following that assessment process. We need to state the risks and consequences of not prescribing the chair. So if you are working with individuals, when we do our information gathering, so the subjective assessment, and we're asking questions about their medical history and their social history, this can be really key in understanding what the risks and consequences may be. Have they got a history of pressure injuries? Is there data to show there are recurrent chest infections or hospital admissions? Are they repeat fallers? So these are really key things to understand how we can justify particular equipment or particular interventions, because this can apply to any intervention that we do, and how we really get the message across that the specialist seating can help manage those risks and consequences. We of course prove how then the specialist seating or the particular seating solutions can meet the needs and back up any claims with evidence. This is a really clear part, giving citations for references, legislation, white papers, NICE guidelines, robust research. This can all show your evidence base and really back up your claims in black and white with data from the government, particularly things like NHS safety thermometers, cost analysis and so on, to really back up your claims. This can then help demonstrate clearly the cost effectiveness of prescribing the chair versus the cost implications of not prescribing the chair over long term. But it's also helpful to put in any past and current interventions that have already been considered or trialled as well, to really prove that you've gone for least restrictive, least costly options first. This will just hopefully help towards that timely manner and getting it right at the right time to reduce the risk of reports and requests bouncing back to you. As we know, there's often panels maybe every month. So if you miss that one and it's sent back to you, you've then got another month, and a lot can happen with individuals we work with in the month. So I outline those past and current interventions, so there's no question that where you've arrived at with your recommendations is that final step in securing equipment. So let's first of all then look at the human cost and those quality of life improvements for specialist seating. Now, posture is directly related to a person's health, well-being and quality of life, and there are going to be physical, psychological and emotional effects of body shape distortion, which usually include severe and life-threatening consequences. Failure to protect body structure can result in significant secondary complications, and what we might see in the individuals we work with are the physical impacts, the health impacts, the psychological impacts, but also the social impacts as well. Lack of posture care in sitting can cause tension on the body, tension on the nervous system, and increase complications such as exacerbated pain. So if we think about individuals maybe with hypertonicity or spasticity and this painful spasm that might be associated with that, severe, violent, involuntary movements, maybe choreic movements, and how that really affects their comfort levels. Unsupported postures can also cause fatigue by inefficient use of the body structure. So all those body segments are not working together as best they could. Now, fatigue can significantly restrict a person's ability to engage in daily living, as well as having this negative impact on them psychologically and socially. As we know, we've already covered, but body distortion tends to be asymmetrical. Now, prolonged asymmetrical positioning can lead to deformities. So things like windsweeping, increased thoracic kyphosis, knee contractures. So as the soft tissues begin shortening and changing, sadly, that can sometimes even result in bone changes, which then become irreversible. So that's the really key part about being proactive, highlighting risk to make sure we don't get those significant changes. If somebody isn't going through a regular full range of movement at their joints, how do we incorporate that into their management plan? We can also see changes to other body systems as well due to pressure and distortion on internal organs. So breathing and digestive issues and even swallow dysfunction. Research has shown that that inability to maintain an upright midline sitting position is associated with a decline in health, which will primarily be reflected as changes to their physiological function. Now, in the real world, what this might present as and things to look out for, these red flags as part of the history taken, are things like recurrent infections, constipation, choking incidents, and even cardiac inefficiency. All these destructive postures that we're talking about also increase the risk of pressure injuries. Now, things are changing. It is more of an awareness these days about how posture and pressure are inextricably linked. The way we hold ourselves, the way we position our body segments has a direct impact on the pressure going through specific body sites. And hopefully we're not just seeing cushions on top of cushions anymore. And there's this understanding of how they are interlinked. The impact of a pressure ulcer on a person is significant, with them being affected from all aspects of daily living, physically, financially, socially, emotionally. It's probably shocking to understand that pressure injuries in older persons are actually associated with a 5-fold increase in mortality, which is shocking when you start thinking about these facts. We've got a range of different people in the audience today, different specialties, different client groups. A lot of the information I'm giving you can be generalised, but if there is specific conditions that you're working with or specific cases, we've got pages and pages of references. These are obviously just highlights that we've taken to cover today, but if you need particular data, then reach out to us and we'll see what we can find to help you with that evidence base. Now, another thing to be mindful of, especially with individuals who we work with who maybe have damage to their body systems, is the risk of falling, generalized weakness from immobility and deconditioning, or maybe they have instability and incoordination from specific conditions like stroke or multiple sclerosis. These neurological impairments can increase the risk of falls. Reduced postural control, and involuntary movements can also result in sliding around in the chair and even sliding out of the chair. So transfers into and out of the chair, but also staying secure within the chair itself become an important factor in postural care and something to definitely think about as part of that clinical justification. Because remember what I said when we talk about clinical justifications, we're thinking about the individual, the support network, but also the environment as well and how they access that. Now, a fall can be devastating. The human cost includes things like distress, loss of confidence, pain, injury, and increased morbidity and mortality. Falls can become recurrent as well and result in trauma, including things like head injuries, hip fractures, and open wounds. Now, short and long-term outcomes for individuals are generally poor following a hip fracture, with increased one-year mortality between 18 and 33%. And of course, the negative effects that it has on participation in daily living as well. So the the pain followed by the loss of confidence, and then the lack of engagement and motivation to remain active can have a significant impact on comorbidities, but we'll learn about that in a bit. Next, we have the psychosocial impacts of improper postural care: isolation, dependency, so losing their independence and engagement, inaccessibility, especially if maybe they are becoming confined to the four walls of their bedroom, where they don't have the equipment that allows them to manoeuvre between the environments. Maybe they are not having their pressure care needs addressed, and recurrent pressure injuries are resulting in them spending time in bed, or even physiological function. Are they not being supported to maximise their breathing ability? Do they not have the equipment that allows them to open up their shoulder girdle? Are they having repeated infections, which is then confining them to their bed? And then, of course, the low mood and low confidence that comes with that. Individuals are at risk of becoming confined to their bed. So this is when we see then the lack of social interaction engagement, which is so important for living a fulfilling life. Now, it's probably shocking to understand that loneliness and isolation are twice as harmful as obesity is to physical and mental health. So just to highlight then, just to recap before we move on to the next part, that the benefits of optimum postural care and our key seating objectives include things like comfort and safety, optimum physiology, engagement in activities, effective communication, and ultimately promoting longevity, because specialist seating as part of that postural care, a 24-hour approach, is a key preventative measure to reduce the risk of secondary complications. So we need to be proactive, not reactive, and hopefully identify those who are at risk and get equipment and interventions in before these severe life-threatening secondary complications happen. Ultimately, this inattention to postural care will result in individuals being at increased risk of infection, illness, injury, subsequent hospital admission, and even premature death. It's believed that around 50% of individuals with a learning disability die prematurely related to respiratory-related due to respiratory-related conditions, which we know is directly impacted by their posture. Almost 50% dying prematurely, and it's quite stark when we hear some of these facts and figures, but it's really important to understand that these aren't luxury products. This isn't just a comfy chair, it's a medical device, and it's there to prevent comorbidities and reduce mortality rates. Now, the intention of legislation is to prevent avoidable harm or the risk of harm, making sure that individuals don't receive unsafe care and treatment. Providers must assess the risks to individuals' health and safety during any care or treatment. They must make sure the staff have the qualifications, the competencies, the skills and experience to keep people safe. They've got to make sure that any premises that are used and the environment and any equipment is available in sufficient quantities and safe to use. Medicines as well, when we think about comorbidities, maybe when we think about equipment, when we think about medical devices, making sure that they are supplied in sufficient quantities and managed safely and in line with guidelines. Now, depending on where you are in the country or around the world, I know we've got an audience, we get people joining us internationally as well. This legislation is going to obviously vary in terms of the where you are and what you needed to address. So there's things like the Health and Social Care Act, in Scotland, the Public Bodies Joint Working Act. In Wales, there's a Health and Social Care Quality Engagement Act. Again, so it can be a bit of a rabbit hole, but if you take the time to look into this legislation, it can really help justify, especially when we're talking about these are government legislation, government-led legislation. We're talking about the Department of Health, talking about the social care. If we can use their own evidence to prove why we are being proactive, why we're reducing the risk of harm through our interventions and referencing that, then it can be a really strong part of your report. Again, if anyone wants anything specific and needs any help finding any resources, and do reach out to us, because it might be something we've already helped someone else with, and we have it on record. So NICE guidelines. Again, this is the NICE guidelines. Having a look on the website, depending on the particular client group that you work with, particular conditions you work with, have a search and see what is generalised to you, or what we can utilise as part of your evidence base. Taking the time to understand which of those guidelines you can use and the evidence. But I mean, this one particularly here is for older people, so NICE guidelines. And what it says, that care home providers must address the specific needs of people with social care and long-term conditions, ensuring that they are physically comfortable, but also ensuring that the environment encourages social interaction. So again, we can use this evidence and match up the seating solutions to that. How does the seating solutions meet those needs that are part of these strong legislative guidance? When care homes accept residents, they have a duty under the Care Act to meet their care needs as laid out in their individual care plans. That include things like personal care, transfers, accessing the environment, activities of daily living, and so on. Any care home should have adequate supply of equipment to meet the needs. Plus, there's also the health and safety obligations to staff as well. So Health and Safety Executive is another good website if you needed to justify maybe keeping staff safe, using equipment to reduce carer load, making sure transfers are safe, and so on. And then postural care should be part of their care plan anyway, to get that true holistic approach. Department of Health guidance on NHS funded nursing care practice states that ICB, so these integrated care boards, which I guess the old term was CCGs, the clinical commissioning groups, they should make appropriate arrangements for individuals that require bespoke equipment to meet their needs as outlined in their care plans. Again, I don't know, I know we've got a range of different specialties in the audience, whether all this is applicable to you, whether it's generalised to your area of clinical expertise, but again, these are just highlights of some of the things that can be used as that evidence. Those of you who work in learning disabilities, again, this is a really shocking report. It was a confidential inquiry into premature deaths of people with intellectual disabilities, and it actually established a strong link between a failure to protect body shape and resultant premature death. And a key issue was this inattention to predicting potential problems. So again, that proactive approach to identifying risk. And it was recommended that it should be preventative services, including proactive postural care, should be expertly commissioned. Again, really strong bits of evidence that you can include in your clinical justifications. So that's the human cost, but we also need to ensure longevity of high quality services as well. So we still need to be responsible with our use of funding and resources. We want to make sure that everything is used effectively and as efficiently as possible for the population to be able to access these kinds of resources for a long time to come yet. We know there's only a certain amount of budget, and it's our role really to highlight how we can be cost effective with our interventions, and really get the point across that, yeah, we've got the initial outlay, but actually over the period of time, over the length of that condition or the use of that product, we can actually save significant money. So let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. Now, what we're talking about here, this cost analysis, is the cost of investing in seating provision versus the cost incurred from non-provision. So I thought some of these points would be quite interesting for you to hear, especially if you're working within complex needs. Pressure ulcers, despite raising awareness, despite some of the drivers that are in place, the prevalence rate still continues to be a significant concern. So hospital settings in England, we've got a range from prevalence rate from 3.9 up to almost 28%. Average prevalence in hospital settings in Wales, around 9%. Care homes, very similar, between 2 and 28%. So that's more than 1 in 4 people presenting with pressure injuries, when remember, it's thought that 98% of pressure injuries should be avoidable. So again, that comes into that avoidance of harm, and how specialist seating can help this because of how interlinked posture and pressure are. Obviously, there are different stages of pressure injuries, deep tissue injury, unstageable stages. But just to highlight really the cost implications, treating pressure damage costs the NHS 3.8 million every day. When we talk about individual costs, depending on the grade, so a grade 1, for example, the skin still remains intact, we're still talking around £1,000 to treat that pressure ulcer. Moving up to a stage 4, where there's full thickness tissue loss, over £14,000. So if you think about individuals who have a history of pressure injuries, are continuously presenting with pressure injuries, suddenly those costs start stacking up if we don't have more of a holistic, proactive approach to managing that. Contractures is another one which are costly to the individual because of the pain associated, of course, and the limitations on functions, but also to society as well. The estimated cost for inpatient treatment and surgery for a single contracture is around £18,000. Conservative approaches to preventing and managing contractures are needed, and we can actually think of specialist seating as an orthotic device. So we need that corrective purpose to be utilised to not only help the individual to stop those contractures becoming severe, but also for the cost savings as well, them not needing corrective treatment for it, corrective surgery. So, for example, if an individual we know maybe they are non-ambulant, or they tend to develop this typical fetal position at night time with the knees flexed, and they not having the joint go through full range of movement. Independently, they're not moving, and it's not going through that range of movement, and they've got risk of soft tissue shortening and that contracture developing. How can we be proactive and utilise things like nighttime positioning, and then even things like leg rest elevation if it's suitable, to move the knee through range of movement to reduce the need for invasive, expensive surgery later on. So it's about thinking outside the box and not just thinking of it as offering comfort, but actually how do we utilise it as a medical device. When we talk about individuals who maybe have repeated infections, falls, and subsequent hospital admissions, there's obviously going to be costs associated with that as well. So, for example, maybe the average cost of a non-elective inpatient stay, you're talking £1,600. If somebody's having repeated admissions, and we're thinking, you know, that's suddenly £3,000, £4,500, £6,000 upwards for these repeated hospital stays against the offset cost of getting equipment in a timely manner to reduce those things from happening. Thinking about falls management, safe transfers, managing the physiological function, getting them to breathe appropriately, reducing the risk of aspirational pneumonia and those infections that happen. Because hospital admissions are costly and they're always going to cost more than the equipment that we're putting in place. So again, we can highlight that in our reports and show the difference, show that comparison. Now, falls are the #1 reason that older people are taken to hospital emergency departments, and the annual cost to the NHS from falls alone is estimated at 2.3 billion. Hip fractures account for 1.8 million hospital bed days and 1.1 billion in hospital costs every year. So again, thinking holistically about how that chair is utilised for all aspects of daily living, not just the comfort and the function, but mobility, falls management, fatigue management, making sure that physically they're going through joint range of movement, getting them active as possible, and really highlighting every aspect of that in our clinical justifications. From a social care perspective, when we think about individuals who sadly cannot be managed within the home anymore, again, can interventions that we put in place keep them in their homes for longer, keep them safe in their homes for longer? Can we make sure the support network is supported and empowered to continue at home, so that breakdown isn't happening and going into crisis? Can we utilise specialist seating, for example, to reduce carer load, to help with moving and handling, manoeuvrability around the home? But also individuals who might want to keep that independence at home. Can we do things to the chair, integrate environmental systems, for example, to keep their occupation going, so they can manage the environment and control the environment from the chair to keep them safe at home? Do we need things like an automatic tilt on the chair, so tilt in space, we can take it through that regulated automatic movement to manage the pressure injuries at home and hopefully reduce the need of them having to go into social care. Professional care is charged at an hourly rate of between £10 and £30 per hour. This obviously increases at night time, upwards of £100 a night. Now, the average weekly cost of care home places, residential and nursing, both older people and working age adults combined, has now increased to over £800 a week. Of course, those with complex presentations is going to be more expensive because of the standard, higher, more costly than standard care because of the staff to resident ratio that often needs to be higher. And some places at even £2,000, £3,000. So again, keeping individuals at home, if that's something that's an objective, that's certainly something to put into the report. And then lastly, another cost that is incurred that can be helped by specialist seating when we talk about obesity. So inactivity, limited mobility, loss of motivation to engage in activity can result in obesity, and obviously that increases the risk of other serious health complications as well. Physical inactivity costs the NHS around £1 billion and obesity around £5 billion. Now, specialist seating can be utilised to promote functional movement through enabling safe transfers, giving them the motivation, I guess the confidence to want to be able to transfer from the chair and continue with their activity where possible. Things like the forward tilt on the chair to encourage that standing, allowing them to access the environment, to be able to transfer to other rehab equipment maybe, and thinking really how do we integrate it with other pieces of equipment, other settings as well, especially rehabilitation, where we are hoping to see an improvement rather than a regression. So that's a lot of me talking. Just a summary then of the benefit of postural care. We've of course got the clear benefits of the health, wellbeing and quality of life of individuals, investing in those services to enhance and see those quality of life improvements. But there's also the reduction for intensive, invasive and often expensive interventions, which will hopefully target the human cost, but also benefit the wider economy as well. That's a really key part that we need to include in the clinical justifications. And just a recap of the checklist that can help benefit, hopefully, to make sure you feel like you have a comprehensive report. And again, we have lots of examples. We've even got clinical justification documents for each of the chairs, depending on which chair you are prescribing, a bit of a cut and paste exercise, different functions and accessories and how it can help particular postural challenges and include in that. And as I said, making sure you have that clear reference list as well to show the evidence base, show the data that's out there to really justify the cost effectiveness. And then what we can see then is the benefits on so many different levels. We've of course got the individual. They are the reason why we do what we do. They are not particularly concerned with the cost saving aspect, but it's certainly something that we need to consider as professionals and for ensuring service provision. So the individual, we've got improved outcomes, we've got the avoidance of related harm, lower mortality rates, higher quality personalised care. We've got this support network by reducing workload, reducing caregiver effort and load, safer working environments. We've got us as professionals where we'll have improved job satisfaction and morale, greater autonomy, empowerment, but also skill enhancement and knowledge sharing as well as we work holistically with a multidisciplinary team where possible. We've got organisational benefits where we have improved staff retention because of the morale levels. We are going to be using resources more efficiently. less intensive interventions because we've been proactive in stopping those significant secondary complications coming in, which then obviously has significant economic value. And then there's a systems approach with that proactive care to support early identification. The long-term benefits will outweigh the short-term indicators within health and social care. Just quickly how we can help. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are always here to help. If you have specific individuals or client groups, if you're new to seating, if you're doing refreshers, then please do reach out to us. We've got a comprehensive education programme. We've of course got these live monthly webinars. We do training events all around the country, study days and road shows, our info centre, so everything pretty much that we talk about, all the resources are all on the website, blogs, articles, case studies, clinical evaluations. We've even got our encyclopedia of specialist seating, a pocketbook of seating, which is a quick, handy reference guide to take out and about in the field. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are dedicated not only to the individual, but helping you to support the individual as well. And ultimately, that means securing equipment. And the clinical justification has to be really, really strong. So if there's anything you need to ask, please do let us know. And you'll get a copy of all these references as well. So I thought what we do now, let's get us back up on the screen, is have a look at some outcomes really. That's a lot of me talking around the theory overall, but actually what does this look like in real life? So what we're going to do, we're going to think about Frida and John thinking about a care home environment, and to really show you, if you're new to specialist seating, if you're new to postural care, how CareFlex seating can help with cost effectiveness. Of course, we've got lots of information out there to help the individual. So if you want some more information on personalised care, then we've got lots of past webinars and resources to talk about the individual. But we wanted to use this opportunity to really highlight the cost effectiveness of seating. So if we think about Frida, elderly lady with late stage dementia, and sadly, the progression that inevitably happens within dementia care, and actually utilising equipment and recycling and reissuing equipment. This is a stark reality, unfortunately. But when we talk about multi-user environments and using equipment, between thinking about long-term, not only for the individual, but also long-term use of the chair as well. So it's not just the lifetime of the individual, but the lifetime of the chair. So John then, in comparison, experienced a stroke now within the care home, hopefully some rehab potential, and give you an idea of really how differently one chair can enhance the life of so many different people. So just to demonstrate some of the theory and some of to justify some of the facts and figures that Rebecca's been through there, I've got 3 chairs from the range. The chair we'll focus on will be the multi-adjust advanced. But I thought I'd introduce, give you the potential for reissue of all the chairs within the CareFlex range, from the kind of original CareFlex chair, the Hydro Tilt, to the most complex chair that we do, the Smart Seat Pro. I'd just like to share a quick tip if you're looking to reissue a product, perhaps from a joint equipment store, or perhaps look at the chair in use in a care home and think that may be useful for somebody else. All CareFlex seating are Class 1 medical devices. As such, each chair has a unique serial number, little silver label at the back of the chair. You probably can't quite see it, but that's the reflection. You can see the reflection, yeah. And that will give us the exact specification of the chair. So what that means is that if you've got that number, if you'd like to check with us to see what the specification is, we can identify that spec, so we can tell you the seat width, the potential seat depth, because it's adjustable, the options. We can tell you, or you can assess whether or not the chair is capable of being adjusted for your client or resident's needs. The Hydro Tilt is a tilt and space chair with adjustable seat width and seat depth, angle adjustable footplate with a negative angle leg rest. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the tilt, because the chair we really looked at for Frida and John was the multi-adjust.
we're still supplying spare parts for hydrotilt chairs, 10, 15 years old. So, you know, never doubt the capability of a chair or its reissue potential.
Yeah, it's probably important if those of you who maybe work in equipment stores, get in touch with us if there's a chair there. Even things down to, I mean, changing the covers, isn't it? There's as simple as reissuing.
Loose covers. So if you were to rip a cover, they're also antimicrobial, so that'll help prolong the use of the chair. And
even older, as I said, we've got some hydrotilts 15 plus years still in action. We've got a great on-site design and engineering team. There's something we can help to look at to see whether we can reissue it and revive it.
Yeah. So for Frida and for John, the chair we're going to focus on is the multi-adjust. This is the advanced version of the chair. I'll explain to you what quantifies the advanced version as over and above the standard version of the multi-adjust. It's a tilt and space chair, great for fatigue management. We also have back angle recline, all controlled at the rear of the chair. To leave it here. So tilt and space, just squeeze and adjust. It's posture neutral, help with fatigue management. Back angle recline, I won't go into detail, but we need to be careful about how we use back angle recline. It's a double lock lever. So the first adjustment is just to prompt me to think, what am I doing with this adjustment? Once I'm happy, I know it's the back angle, I release the lever, adjust. You can hear it locking there.
Yeah, we always can go off on a tangent here, but it's worth noting, as Les highlighted, some of the functions that we're covering now as part of the assessment process is for understanding what's safe and appropriate for individuals. There are particular functions. Back angle recline is a key one. Leg rest, elevation, tilt and space we need to be mindful of. It could be contraindicated, and I'm sure Kim will pop it in the chat for you. We've got documents on safe and appropriate use of particular functions like that if you're new to seating or if you want to understand more, because we just haven't got the time, sadly, to go in depth on that today.
Yeah, and just to say as well, all the adjustments I'm making to the chairs, that's covered on our website as well. If you like to go to the page that's specific to the chair and search for how-to videos, everything you see me doing today is repeated on the how-to video. So it'll show you how to adjust the seat width, the depth, how the leg rest works. So with Frida, she was slightly contracted. So the negative angle of the leg rest came in really handy. Angle, adjustable, elevating leg rest. Pelvic stability, we needed to adjust the seat width and the seat depth, both are built into the chair.
That's probably a really key point there about seat width and seat depth. Even though probably the most basic aspect of the chair setup is often overlooked, actually, especially in multi-user environments. If a chair has been utilised for different users at different times of the day, or if it's been reissued, then go back to the basics. Seat depth, seat width are really fundamental, to that postural stability and pelvic stability. So just a tip there, if you're working in environments, make sure that the training needs and the awareness is there around adjusting chairs, and that's something we can help with if you're working with particular agencies or organisations that have CareFlex seating.
So there's your seat width. I'll show you seat depth in a second. We can also adjust the arm height. It's built into the chair.
And for Frida, particularly when we talk about dementia care, that typical fetal position that they might be adopting at night, really helpful, because those adjustments are independent, left to right and front to back, so it can help with wind sweeping, so it can really support the whole thigh.
Seat depth adjustment at the rear of the chair. Little lever here, which is a lock. I'll turn that lever and pull it back towards me to increase the seat depth, push it away from me to decrease the seat depth.
All tool free.
And done specifically to meet Frida's requirements. So there we go. For lateral support, I should mention as well, the chair comes with pressure care as standard. It's on water cell technology. Again, if you want to refer to the website for more information on the pressure care, you'll find that there. Lateral support.
Probably a good opportunity, actually, while that's off, just to really highlight one thing we didn't cover was infection prevention and control. So just really highlight how modular it is and how easy it is to maybe decontaminate and reissue.
Yeah, I can strip this chair back to the metal frame in 5 minutes without tools and spanners and levers and tools, just to to bring it back so you can have a deep clean of the product.
Yeah, covers antimicrobial as well. Four-way stretch.
So trying to balance comfort and posture is key for us. You know, without chair being comfortable for Frida, she didn't have the motivation to want to sit in the chair for a long period of time. So we opted for the contoured back, just to prompt that midline position. We couldn't really use adjustable laterals because we didn't have the freedom to get the lateral in between the arm on the chest there. And it just wasn't comfortable. It just wasn't going to work. It was over prescriptive.
Mm-hmm.
So this contoured back just provides that prompt for that midline.
It also allows some active engagement as well, so it's not as rigid. So if you do want somebody to have some active engagement in the chair, but then you've got the support there if it's needed for rest and recuperation if they do become fatigued.
There's a little bit of adjustment in the height of these laterals as well. So if that's a little bit too low for a shorter individual, we can just spin that round. See the lateral is positioned slightly higher, so it'll give the support where it's needed. You can see how easily I take the back on and off the chair. Just use this clip system into pre-drilled holes or pre-cut holes in the back of the chair there. You also use the headrest, Frida. So Frida no longer needed the chair. John needed postural support after his stroke. So we needed to adapt the chair to meet John's needs. The lateral support, the contoured back, wasn't quite prescriptive enough. John had a slightly kyphotic posture as well. So we needed to think about how we bring the support surface out to John. So there was a mixture of posture and comfort again. On the new Advance, we've got this new streamlined waterfall back, which is ideal comfort, also helping to accommodate a kyphotic posture that John had. Change the top section for a more cushioned section here. See how easy I can do that. So we were slightly kyphotic. So what we needed to do is just to position that specifically to meet John's needs. Waterfall back, I sometimes think is a little bit dangerous because it's comfortable, but there isn't always enough lateral support in that chair. You know, somebody falls asleep, they'll fall to one side. We need to be careful of that.
Yeah, the assessment is critical here to understand those postural support needs and how much external support is needed.
So the design of this waterfall back allows the use of adjustable laterals as well. So we're I guess we're compromising in a sense, aren't we, between comfort and posture, but still basically the same chair that we were using for Frida.
Yeah. So hopefully, I mean, we're highlighting here multi-user use and the cost effectiveness between reissuing products, but also we highlighted, especially in the likes of John, where you're hoping for some rehab potential and actually how we can then build up the chair and take stuff away as well. So hopefully you're just getting the equipment right the first time and there's no need for additional chairs or expenses added to it further down the line in 6 months, a year.
Optimum posture, isn't it, really?
So again, you're outlining, this initial cost, but this is what we're hoping to achieve. And actually we can do all that tool free with the chair that we already have.
Yeah, so that was the solution we came to for John and Frida. You know, if you work in a care home setting, it's quite important sometimes to explain the versatility and longevity you can get out of the product, which is, you know, sometimes a capital purchase for a care home. So it's good to make them aware of the potential that the chair has in a multi-user setting. Yeah. Before I forward with something, I think that's just about it. We're on time, which is always a surprise. Do we have any questions, Kim?
No, I've been sending lots of links and emails out for various different options. I have got one question that comes through saying, do they have a negative leg rest? Is it suitable for patients who stand a transfer?
Yeah, that's a good point, one which I've missed. So thank you for that question. So the standard tilt in space option for the chair is 0, it goes horizontal. We can reposition what we call the gas strut on the underside of the chair that helps to control and power the tilt in space action, so that instead of just going 30 degrees back, that bright, it'll tilt forward slightly. So that'll have the advantage of bringing somebody's feet flat onto the floor.
And that can be done retrospectively as well.
Yeah, that's importantly retrospectively achieved. We've a negative angle standard on the leg rest. Also, to accommodate a stand assist style hoist, we can use a chamfered arm on the front here. So instead of the arm being the full length, this top section is cut at an angle to accommodate those paddle arms of the stand assist hoist. And the other thing to point out is that we're looking at very much standard accessories here for the CareFlex chairs, but we do have a tailored solution option as well, which means that we can make bespoke components to a chair. So we'd always discuss that as part of the assessment process, but sometimes physically you can't. You can imagine somebody with a contracture of 45 degrees. It's very, very difficult to get that person sat in a chair without taking the leg rest and the footbed away.
That's something we have done.
Yeah, which is something we've done.
Yeah.
So we as part of the assessment process, we'd identify that need and we'd come up with an engineered solution to the postural requirements of that individual.
Yeah, it could be a substantial change to the actual frame of the chair, but the beauty of having, the design and engineering team on site with us means we can be capable of doing tailored solutions.
We've 30 years of experience, because in my time with assessing with the company, I've come across some really unique and bespoke requirements that you think are once in a lifetime, but you'd be surprised how often that prognosis may crop up over time. So we're in a good position to be able to suggest solutions for more complex postural requirements as well.
We've got a history of 10,000 different.
It's a massive, sounds like an exaggeration, but 10,000 plus tailored solutions that we have for the chairs. Okay, Jen?
Regarding all those chairs that you have there, are they all available in smaller sizes? And do they do the same thing?
Yeah, they do the same. Small and mini hydro tilt, a small version of the multi-adjust, a small version of the Smarty Pro 2. So yeah, small for the smaller stature of the children, yes.
And an XL going up there as well.
Yeah, an XL going wider.
Yeah.
Up to 35 stone, 26-inch seat width on the hydro tilt.
Essentially, the functions and accessories are the same, just scaled down depending on the proportions of the body segments.
Yeah, I mean, with the multi-adjust, the small version of the multi-adjust, we try to incorporate within the dimensions of the chair the needs of perhaps the shorter stature but relatively wide hip width, where was what we used to find before, what we used to find in the industry in general. To use a medium-sized chair to accommodate the seat width, but you'd be losing a lot line and seat, the floor height and back height. It just wouldn't look right. So the small version of this multi-adjust is ideal for that kind of elderly Down syndrome client. It's just about to go off their feet, perhaps dementia, works really well with that client group.
And likewise with the Smarty Pro, in terms of, because of the column, the central column, we've taken sections away. So we didn't quite show you that chair, but we've taken sections away, we've added sections. So if the seat height and seat width are suitable, but actually they maybe have a shorter trunk or a longer trunk, then we've actually adjusted the column as well.
Just not having enough time. We don't have enough time to go through the range in full. I could be here all day and all evening, really. But again, if you'd like to see the chairs in more detail, treat this as a taster, if you like. We can come to visit you with a selection of the chairs, and you can get hands-on with the chairs as well. Excuse me.
Anything else, Kim?
Yes, I would just like to add to that. We're doing lunch and learns at the moment across the country. We've got seating assessors that cover all the areas. So if anyone would like to sign up for one of those, just email us at training@careflex.co.uk.
Thank you. And just to mention as well, I mean, we've only had like an hour with you today. It's been a lot of information. I just wanted to say, keep your eyes peeled in the summertime. We're doing a lot of work at the moment around clinical justifications, and we'll have something exciting to share with you by the summer to hopefully further consolidate and help you in such challenging times, really.
Are we done, Kim?
Do you have a cooling option on the fabrics for those that can't regulate their temperature?
As a tailored solution, there are options, yeah. We can use different fabrics, but the chairs, because of the snug fit, that kind of inherently a warmer seating surface to be sitting on anyway. But
yeah, they are
we
fully
use the
stretched.
fabrics, yeah.
They are fully stretch breathable, but depending on the need, if there is something more specific, then there's something we can look at as a tailored.
The fabric, the fully stretch, does have the wick away heat and moisture.
Thank you, guys. I think that's all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We hope to see you all soon. Keep a lookout for the next webinar in June. I believe it's on Huntington's.
Yep.
And there may be something new there as well. So we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.